Welcome to chapel. That song comes from John Guerra. He's from the Chicago land, and now he is doing music and doing some touring in Texas. I heard this song this last weekend, his song Citizens, when some friends of mine and I gathered at their house, and he said, "Hey, let's watch this music video that moved me pretty significantly." And the lyrics struck me. And so if we just go over them, there is a wolf who is ranting. All of the sheep, they are clapping, promising power and protection, claiming the Christ who was killed. Killed by a common consensus, everyone screaming Barabbas, trading their God for a hero, forfeiting heaven for Rome. Coming to you because I'm angry, coming to you because I'm guilty, coming to you because you've promised to leave the flock for the one. I need to know there is justice, that it will roll in abundance, that you're building a city. When we arrive, where we arrive as immigrants, and you call us citizens, and you welcome the children home. The song brings together, I think, so many, not only of our collective feelings, but of collective feelings in previous churches throughout history that have struggled with what is their relationship to the empire? What is my disposition to Rome? And there's a number of different options for that question. On the one hand, we can completely affirm everything Rome has to offer. And some churches have done that. On the one hand, we can see kind of a blended model where we take some things from Rome and we take some things from the historic Christian church and we try to bring them together like an unholy puzzle that won't quite fit together, and some churches have done that. And there have been other churches, other communities of people who, instead of choosing either of those two options, have chosen the route of persecution, have chosen not to ally themselves with Rome, have chosen not to seek power and privilege and protection, have chosen not to seek security, but instead have chosen to love, care, and serve the poor and proclaim that Christ is Lord above all. And today we are in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, and we are going to examine a couple different churches and how they respond to Rome. So if you've been following with the book so far, we've opened up with John writing just off the coast of a nearby area, which we'll see in a second, and he's telling us that this is a letter written to specific people at a specific time for a specific purpose. The letter is a revelation. It's an unveiling for the people receiving this letter to see all the things that have been hidden that maybe they were missing in their day-to-day life as Rome was their overseer. And so the first vision that John actually gives us in this book, Denville covered last week, and it's this vision of a risen Jesus. And John describes this incredible vision of Jesus as the God-man sitting on a throne with a golden sash of victory, with white hair of wisdom and purity, with bright eyes that pierce through the darkness of the moment, with bronze feet like a giant statue of strength and stability. It's a firm anchor with a voice like cascading waters, or better yet, the crash of the waters on the rocks at the ocean. It's loud and yet soothing, and you can see that this Jesus speaks with power and control, and he's not to be underestimated. And so you can see right at the beginning of this book that this is a book meant to play with your imagination, and it challenges you not just to engage Jesus intellectually with your mind, to just keep Jesus as an idea, as this guy who might have lived, I might have some kind of relationship with, my mom kind of knew him, I don't really need to. So he's not just an idea, but instead he is present. He is saturating your entire being. The revelation of John brings Jesus into our imagination, challenging us to imagine completely different futures, different possibilities. Like, what would change if this was actually our picture of Jesus? Because what if Jesus was truly and really the resurrected one, the one who wears victory like a sash? He wears it on his person with a crown of wisdom, who can cut through the darkness of the world by just looking at it, who is a safe object and a stable person in a moment that feels completely unstable, whenever your life feels unstable. And if his voice can cut through all the noise and power and control that we are used to, then maybe I can trust this Jesus. Maybe I can follow this Jesus on the narrow path of life. And maybe the hard call of following this Jesus is actually worth it, because in the end, victory is a sash. And so when Revelation is peeling back the curtain of reality to show us what's really going on, this is what John intends to let soak into our imaginations. As we make our way through this book, we're meant to keep this vision of Jesus on the forefront of our minds. Because remember, the church is receiving this letter after having undergone already a couple decades of persecution. The church has already lost some of its big hitters. And they're kind of wondering, what the heck comes next? Our first generation of Christians are being killed by Rome, and we have had to figure out what is the next step. And so John shows up with this awesome vision of Jesus that's meant for Christians who have bled and died for their profession and practice and heart for the poor and lonely. And so this is the Jesus that does not sound like he can be tamed by Rome. He's already taken the worst that Rome could throw at him, crucifixion, and he defeated it in the resurrection. And so this Jesus does not quite seem like he can be domesticated for the ideology and politics of Rome. Like Caesar cannot look at Jesus and say anymore, you declare Caesar is Lord and you are not, because they tried that and they failed and he resurrected. This Jesus stands above it all, and it ultimately freaks Rome out. It ultimately freaks him out. It seems radical. They seem like they're insurrectionists. They seem like they're the kinds of people who want to overthrow Rome. But this Jesus won't be domesticated. So today we're in chapters 2 and 3 of the Revelation of John, where Jesus instructs John to write to 7 churches. And we actually get 7 individual addresses to 7 individual churches, because these are 7 communities of believers trying to figure out what it looks like to follow Jesus in their current moment, in their city. And so I have a picture just so that you can place where he's literally writing. It's to modern day Turkey, and so we have a picture of that. You see where Turkey's located for those of us who may not be as geographically gifted. I've seen those TikToks where it's like, what is it? It's the guy with the mic who goes who did we gain independence from? People are like, Mexico? And he's like, that's exactly right. And he moves on. So for those of us that would be that kind of geographically gifted or knowledge history, this is a picture of Turkey. And the next slide actually shows the 7 churches that John is actually writing to. The blue dots represent ballpark, the 7 churches of where he is writing. And the blue dot is actually where John is writing from, the island of Patmos, right off the coast of what is modern day Turkey. So these 7 communities are all handling their cultural moment differently. And so John transitions from this grand and great vision of Jesus into a special and specific message that Jesus has for each one to encourage them in the faith so that they can long persevere and see the gospel pushed out in their city and see the darkness pushed back, and they can help to be imminent figures of transformation and reconciliation among the people. We're not going to read all 7 of the letters because that's a long time, but there are 3 characteristics that kind of run through each of these. The 3 main themes for these churches is that there are some of the churches who have been broken by Rome. There are some of the churches who have faced persecution, and they are now broken by Rome. Some of the churches have decided to give in and just decided to affirm the culture of Rome, the politics, the lifestyle of Rome. Anything that Rome asks of them, they go, you know what? I will make sure to not be like those guys, so I'm going to affirm everything. You have some that are broken, then you have some that affirm. Then you have some who chose a blended middle of both of those options. They chose, instead of affirming, they chose to take some of the things of Rome and take some of the things of Jesus and bring them together. They sought this blended middle. And so, John writes to 2 churches. Now I want us to look at 2 of the sections that John writes to those who are broken by Rome. And those churches are in Philadelphia, not in Pennsylvania. We're in Turkey, remember. Philadelphia and Smyrna. John writes to 2 churches that have experienced persecution, and in their desire for faithfulness, for loving and caring the city they're in, they refuse to give in to Rome. And so here's what John actually tells to the church in Philadelphia. We're in chapter 3, starting in verse 7. We're going to jump around if you're following along in your app. John says, "Write to the angel of the church in Philadelphia. Thus says the Holy One." This is a proclamation to the church. The true one. The one who has the key of David, who opens and no one will close, who closes and no one will open. Rome can't break through these doors. Verse 8, "I know your works. Look, I have placed you before an open door that no one can close, because you have but little power, yet you have kept my word." You recognize you have little power in front of Rome, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Here's the encouragement. I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one takes your crown. And here's what he says to the church in Smyrna. Very similar situation. Starting in chapter 2, verse 8. He says, "Write to the angel of the church in Smyrna." Verse 10, "Don't be afraid of what you are about to suffer." That is not the letter you want to receive. Amen? Don't be afraid of what you're about to suffer. You're like, okay. Look, the devil is about to throw some of you in prison. I didn't say these letters were cheery. I just said that this is Jesus actually talking to his people. The devil is about to throw you in prison to test you, and you will experience affliction for 10 days. It might not necessarily mean 10 literal days, but a lengthy period of time defined by the government, because 10 is a representative number. Be faithful. This is the command. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. Let anyone who has ears to hear listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will never be harmed by the second death. There are churches in persecution that Jesus is writing to, and his response to them is, be faithful, even to the point of death. He then continues, Jesus, as he does, to speak to the churches who are affirming the culture and politics. They've decided to cozy up to Rome because they like the riches, the power, the prestige, and they rationalize it away and go, see, I can actually do this. This isn't a problem. Because now imagine you're near one of the churches by Smyrna or Philadelphia, and you're reading the political tea leaves, and you're looking ahead and you're going, they are about to be persecuted. That does not sound like what I want to do with my Saturday morning. And so you recognize that not falling in line with Rome might mean you experience some level of violence, whether it be economic or physical. And so they chose to completely blend in. They gave into the culture of power and fear of Rome. They mirrored the sexuality of Rome. They bent the knee to Roman gods and to Caesar. They completely gave in. And so here's what Jesus says to them. Chapter 3, starting in verse 1, he says, "Write to the angel of the church in Sardis. Thus says the one who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars." Jesus says, "I know your works. You have a reputation for being alive." That sounds great. I can't wait to read what's next. Jesus says, "But you are dead." Bummer. Verse 2, "Be alert and strengthen for what remains, which is about to die. For I have not found your works complete before my God. Remember then what you have received and heard. Keep it and repent. But you have a few people in Sardis who have not defiled their clothes, who have not given up the faith, and they will walk with me in white because they are worthy." There are those of us who have completely given in to Rome. Now, granted, we're not in the ancient times, but I wonder if there are those of us here who, instead of learning to live out the faith that we actually believe, we've just kind of given in. We've lost all hope. We don't even have enough hope for a blended model. We instead have just let cynicism claim us. Let despair claim us, and we are just kind of there. There's another set of churches that John writes to and that Jesus wants to draw attention to. And these are the churches that have both feet in both spaces. They have one foot in Rome and one foot in the church. On the one hand, they wanted the trappings of Rome, and persecution sounds very uncomfortable. So if I can still do the Jesus thing and avoid persecution, that would be ideal. And on the other hand, they have actually had a personal transformation where they've understood and grown to love the love and grace of Jesus, and they have learned to love their neighbor. And so they've sought this blended faith with Rome. So here is what Jesus says to them in chapter 2, starting in verse 12. Jesus says, "Write to the angel of the church in Pergamum. You are holding on to my name and did not deny your faith in me, even in the days of Antipas, who is my faithful witness, who was put to death among you." He was killed in front of the whole church, is what he's saying, where Satan lives. "But I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to place a stumbling block in front of the Israelites, to eat meat sacrificed to idols, and to commit sexual immorality." Now, this is an Old Testament reference, and one of the difficulties that we have when reading Revelation is we just don't pick up on the Old Testament references because we largely neglect the Old Testament. And so I think the stat is there's 410 verses in Revelation and something like 530 Old Testament references or allusions that we just kind of miss over completely. In fact, in the section that we read, there were a number of Old Testament allusions that we could have connected to and done an entire sermon on as its own. But this is a really obvious one that I want to spend a second looking at, because this is where he goes. You have some there who are holding to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to place a stumbling block in front of the Israelites, to eat meat sacrificed to idols, and to commit sexual immorality. This is what he is referencing. He's referencing an incident in ancient Israel where they were listening essentially to false teaching. That false teacher said, you don't have to worry about the sacrificial system of the other gods, and you can take women or men or whatever it is you want in the temple court, and you can just do whatever it is that you want to do. And so none of that was treated, none of that was addressed, and that ended up leading to the disintegration of Israel. If you're familiar with the Old Testament process, Israel has these moments where it goes, God, we love you, we are really excited, this is what we want to do, we want to commit ourselves to you, and God goes, awesome, you're my people, I love it. And then they'd start getting led away by these kinds of false teachers. And so he's referencing an Old Testament example where this took place. And so verse 15, in the same way, you also have those who hold the teaching of the Nicolaitans. So repent, otherwise I will come to you quickly and fight against them with the sword of my mouth. In the Christian tradition, there are teachings that run completely against what it means to be a Christian. There are closed-handed and open-handed issues, and what John is addressing, what Jesus through John is addressing here is that whatever the Nicolaitans were teaching was disrupting not these open-handed issues that could be just, we don't have to agree on all of these, and there's a significant amount of disagreement, and that's okay, but these closed-handed issues that was actually leading people astray and leading them beyond the spaces that God wanted for them, and led to the disintegration of their own spiritual lives, of their family life, of their community as a whole. Or this is how John puts it to the church in Ephesus, chapter 2, verse 4. You have abandoned the love you had at first. Or when another translation puts it, you have lost your first love. You have lost your first love. And so if we summarize these three churches, these three responses to the power of Rome, some have affirmed the culture, completely giving in. Some have sought a blended model with the culture. Let's take Jesus and some of Rome. And some instead have gone, I would rather be persecuted for my faith than give in to Rome. So now, as I was preparing this message, one of the things that stuck out to me is that we would read these letters, and in our current moment, in the cultural milieu that we're in, of like relativism and pluralism, we read these letters and we go, honest to God, what's the big deal, Jesus? You're just kind of like going off a little bit and you need to chill. What kind of like ideological purity are you about? And so we look at the churches that affirm or the churches that blend and we go, yeah, that seems like a pretty good model. And the churches that are persecuted, we're like, you really didn't have to do that. That wasn't necessary, was it? You could have made peace with Rome. You could have figured out how to live. I mean, honestly, you're being pretty embarrassing as a church. Like, you're kind of giving us a bad name. You seem kind of radical. You seem like you'd rather like let yourself be fed to the lions than like, you're just being at the very least unreasonable. And it's honestly hurting my business. Like, people don't want to deal with me because I'm a Christian, because they recognize that. And so you're going, you are just kind of a little too extreme. And Jesus and these churches, you need to just relax. And this is what we miss about this kind of a passage. The reason Jesus uses strong language towards these churches who affirm or blend culture is because it's a corrupted church. It's a church in corruption. It's fundamentally a church in corruption. See, we've talked about corruption like in our age where we recognize pastors and preachers that have used their platform to protect their power and subjugate those who would disagree or bring legitimate charges of abuse. And we go like, that's corruption. We can recognize that's corruption. It's on the front of the New York Times. We can see that that is a problem. But when we read these churches, when we see this blended model, we do not connect one and and one together and go, actually, I think this is corruption and this is corruption. This leads to the very kind of a thing that I detest, that I feel hurt by, that's the reason my friends are not interested. This is the corruption of the church in our age that Jesus is talking about, the one that protects power and prestige, allying themselves with the politics of the day. But honestly, this is the hard word for the American church. The hard word for the American church is this is the exact church you want. No, it's not. I don't want that. This is the exact church we want. I just read an article not too long ago about a church in, I think it was Ohio, that has explicitly refused to take a partisan political left or right stance, and they are talking about how that church is in significant decline. Because people are going, if you are not going to stand for my politics, I am not interested. I think the hard word is that the corruption of the church that we lament, rightly so, is we are getting exactly what we wanted. I mean, right? We'd rather go to a church with a large TikTok following. We'd rather go to a church that's quite well branded, where everybody is put together, where they have trendy clothes, and we go, this is exactly what I'm looking for, because I see me up there. We want a church that has a low cost to discipleship, that actually never disagrees with my preferences. We want a church that affirms our politics, our understanding of power, our understanding of gender and sexual preferences, and hates all the same people I do, and a Jesus who is very domesticated. We don't actually want the Jesus that John kicks off at the beginning of this letter, the Jesus that holds the stars in his hands, because that Jesus does not seem necessary in the least. We want a tolerant Jesus, a nice Jesus, one who can coexist with Rome and coexist with my career plans and coexist with my nice vision for a nuclear family. We don't want any disruption at all. And if we have any disruption, then maybe we need to scoot Jesus out a little bit because he has too much of a voice. Because that Jesus will sell books. That Jesus will get downloads. That Jesus is cool. He's present. Like, honestly, there are 1,000 reasons why you should and could give up your faith completely. There are 1,000 reasons why you should look at Christianity and go in the opposite direction. I mean, your own disappointment and doubt that creeps up, your fear over failure or over the future, the sad stories that we see in testimonials that we see on TikTok, the cultural pressure, the church corruption, just the scarcity of time that we have. Like, there's so many reasons for us to abandon the church entirely, for us to move away from it. And honestly, there's only one reason to stay. And that's the Jesus vision in the beginning of this book. That's the Jesus that is present in the midst. That's the Jesus who comes alongside the churches that have completely sold everything to Rome and said, you can have it all. And he goes, I still have a future for you. Notice, he does not actually call them anything other than children. He says, I have something against you, but his goal is restorative. Dallas Willard said this when it comes to discipleship to Jesus. He says, a disciple of Jesus is the one who is with him, learning to be like him, and who intends to say and do what Jesus would say and do, in the manner in which he would say and do it. One of the ways that we've talked about this in the past, last semester, was we drew 3 circles, and we'll go through this really quick. Orthodoxy, or right belief. This is where our mind, we are thinking after the things of Christ. We have orthopraxy, or right action, where our bodies are doing the things of Jesus, the works of Jesus, healing, being present with people, listening well, and sacrificing. We have orthopraxy, or right emotion, where our hearts are reoriented to the things of God. And when we bring these things together, we recognize this is a hard and difficult cost to following Jesus. And that's exactly the kind of thing Jesus talked about a lot in the Gospels, is that it actually is going to be difficult. It will be costly, but it would be worth it. And so I have 3 things for us by way of response. The first is, I think we can use the language of the New Testament and say repent, where we turn away from those ways that we are allying ourselves with the current cultural moment. We recognize that maybe I've compromised my faith. Maybe I actually haven't taken it seriously. Maybe I'm just affirming everything that's around me, and I just need to develop and think after Christ and be caught up in this imagination that Revelation presents. Or maybe for you, you just need some fresh hope. And marinating and sitting your mind in this is who Jesus actually is the most healthy and helpful thing for you. But I recognize that there are some of us who are cynics, who might go, things will never change, it's not possible. And I love what I heard recently from Pastor John Tyson, who said, sometimes the cynics make the best reformers. As a cynic, you can choose to be bitter, or you can choose to reform from within. Or maybe our response is an invitation, where we extend an invitation to Jesus for him to sit with us and sort through, how do we do this well? I'm not saying I have the answers. Absolutely not. What I do know is I need the Spirit to empower me. I need Jesus to be with me. And I'm comforted by the words of the verses that we read, we listened to at the beginning. Killed by a common consensus. Everyone screaming Barabbas. Trading their God for a hero, forfeiting heaven for Rome. I'm coming to you because I'm angry. I'm coming to you because I'm guilty. I'm coming to you because you've promised to leave the flock for the one. I need to know there is justice, that it will roll in abundance, and that you're building a city where we arrive as immigrants, and you call us citizens, and you welcome us as children home. May you be blessed. Have a good rest of your day.